Daniel. Everyone out there, I want you to meet Daniel Markham. He is the author of this fantastic book. I know it's backwards, but it's 52 Masses, A Journey to Experience Catholicism Across America. A fantastic read. You've got to pick this book up. So I'm so excited for you to join me so that we can talk about the book. But first, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a lifelong Catholic, born to as far back as every Irish Catholic member of my family would go, and then married a lifelong Catholic who also happens to be a Catholic school principal. She's been working in the Catholic schools for 20 years. All of our kids, K through 12. So for the most part, our life revolved around our parish as the kids were growing up. So, it's always been a big part of my life, and only grew even more so over the course of 14 months.
Wonderful. I find the idea of attending 52 masses in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. That's just like an amazing goal that you had you set for yourself. Can you tell us what are the origins of this incredible journey that you went on for a little over 2 years, right?
About 14 months is what it took.
Mm-hmm.
In 2016, I had just dropped off my youngest son at high school soccer practice. He went to Marquette Catholic High School in Michigan City, Indiana. And I was reminded of a small parish that my oldest son and I had visited a couple of times. It's actually located in the Indiana Dunes National Park. It's called St. Anne of the Dunes, and it was built in part by Lithuanian immigrants. And so every third Sunday they have a mass in Lithuanian. And my oldest son, is a lover of all things the world. He actually works as a refugee officer and works with people who are seeking asylum in the U.S. So he goes to foreign countries and interviews them. So that's always been his passion. So we used to go to mass in foreign languages services wherever he could find them. And so they had one at this parish, and so we had gone a couple times. So I was just reminded of it. It just flashed into my head. I was near it, and suddenly just this idea flooded over me. I should go to mass in all 50 states, and the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico, and that's 52, and I could do it in a year, and I could write about it because I'm a writer. So by the time I got home, the whole idea for the book was in my head, and for the most part, that was back in 2016. I targeted 2021 to do the trip because that's when my youngest would be out of high school. So I didn't want to, be on the road while he was still at home. So, just kind of mostly sat dormant for a while. I talked to my bishop, I talked to my pastor about it, and they liked the idea. And then in 2018, 19, I realized this is about the time that I needed to get started and figure out where I'm going to go. So I over the course of about 6 months, first I wrote all the bishops and archbishops and explained it, told them I had the blessing of my bishop and my pastor, and just I really wanted to be very transparent about everything. And some of them responded very nice letters and stuff. But then when I got done with that, then I just started writing emails to every parish in the country that had an email address. And I said, this is what I'm doing. If you have an idea for a story that you think would make a good addition to the book, let me know. Because I knew that this way I would get better stories by reaching out to them. It's like, two examples, I never would have gone to Alaska to fly with Father Scott if he hadn't invited me. I wouldn't have thought of that. And one of the very first parishes that kind of got back to me, because I did it alphabetically, was Connecticut, and they mentioned the pastor at Newtown, and talking about how the parish helped the community recover from City Hook. And obviously, when I saw that, I was that's a story I would love to to tell. So I mean, that made it I got much better stories that way, and also I would get parishes that wanted me there. People that were oh, this is something we would like, and rather than kind of force myself on someone. But a funny thing happened as I was doing that. I started most of the people responded by email, naturally, because that's how I sent it out. But a few people called me, and it was the phone calls that really changed things for me. You know, like I said, I've been writing professionally my whole life. So when this idea came to me, I thought, you know, that's something I can do. You know, this is really something, you know, some kind of my strength as a writer. And but as I started talking to people about their pastor, about their parish, about this ministry that involved, about the church festival, you know, anything that they were passionate about, that they were really invested in, I started to really understand what I was doing a little better. And I realized that, you know, this wasn't something I could do. This was something I was supposed to be doing. And that changed everything, because suddenly it was really a lot more important that I got it right. Since I wasn't just doing this, you know, I wasn't doing this for me, I was doing it for, you know, for my church. And, but I also felt like a sense that in order to tell the story properly, I didn't have to just tell their stories about, you know, the various people, you know, and the ministries and efforts I was writing about, but I also had to convey how the experience affected me. You know, my spirituality, my growth, you know, my relationship with Christ and the church, that had to be present throughout the book. And I mean, I don't know how well I did it, but I got that sense that this is what is being asked of me. And this is to do the book as best as I could. I had to not only tell their stories, but I had to also show that how it had affected me. And you know, like I said, I don't know how I did that, but I hope that it came through, because I know I do.
It did. It did come through. It did come through very, very clearly. And I was touched by so many. When I thought about in our conversation that we were going to have, I narrowed it to two that stood out particularly. But each and every parish that you visited, there was something unique about their community. And the two that stood out, one was St. Michael's in St. Michael, Minnesota, because I feel, you know, the youth, of course, the youth is the church's future. And reading that, you know, just how dynamic the youth program is there. And that was one of the ones that they run an extreme faith camp every summer, and there's over 200 youth that attend that. And I think that's crucial. And then another one that really touched my heart, because I have experienced several miscarriages. So the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, co-patroness of the unborn in Bakersfield, California. That was beautiful to recognize the life of those babies that were lost, you know, before birth. So
when I got home, I went and my neighbor had once considered, you know, he had considered the priesthood before he you know, he found his vocation in married life. But I would when I would get home from trips, he would always, you know, ask me where I had been, and he was very excited about it. And when I got back from California, it was really neat, because a lot of these trips I had because I was driving really long distances, I had a lot of time to reflect, and you know, and pray over my experiences. I got back from California, and I was telling him the story, and he said, "Those women sound like saints." And I said, "That's how I," and I didn't. It was like I was voice that, but what I felt was the women of Bakersfield were the closest thing I'm ever going to come to meeting saints on earth. That was just how amazed I was. All I was just their faith and how they are living it, and you know, for the other women, you know, that they serve in their community, it was really powerful. And I, like I said, that's how I still see those women there. They were just so inspiring. But as for St. Michael, one of the things that I hoped to accomplish with the book was that people, you know, obviously I wanted to just tell a story of who we were, but I also wanted to, you know, hopefully maybe inspire other, people maybe who are weak in their faith, or who haven't not encountered the faith yet, that maybe this was an entry point where they could see themselves in, because these are mostly like you and I. These are mostly lay people, who have just answered their own call in one way or another to serve. And I was hoping that maybe some people could see, hey, that's something I could do. I can't be the women of Bakersfield, but that's something, that I, there's something there. But I also hope that maybe people like ourselves who are already strong in our faith, they might see something from, our parish isn't particularly good at educating and keeping our young people engaged after confirmation. What are they doing in St. Michael that's so successful, and how can we implement it here? And so I hope that maybe people could take some of those things that were helping elsewhere. The Kathy Cooper in Colorado Springs, who runs the ministry for recovery, to help divorce in the recovery process. Maybe, hey, our diocese could use something like that. And I hope that people could take, maybe and see that's an area that we do a better job serving entire communities, whether that's internally within the church or our communities, or just in Oklahoma City, where they're doing a tremendous job just building disciples. So how I hope that other people who read it might take something away from it and apply it to their own parish communities or dioceses, so we all grow as.
Yes, that's beautiful to look inside ourselves, to say, I know I have talents. God gave me talents and abilities. How can I put that in best use for my parish, for my community? How can I reach out and do? Because we are called to serve. That's one of the things that, as disciples of Christ, right?
Yeah.
We're called to serve. But this undertaking was unbelievable to travel that amount of distance. And so how did you kind of go about planning the places that you were going to go and the times that you were going to go?
So I was doing my regular job at the time, which I do from home. So it was feasible. On top of that, my regular job does involve some travel. So if I had something that would, like I had a conference in Atlanta that I had to be in late August. So that was when I went to the Vigil Mass. I also needed to go to the Vigil Mass in the summer in Alabama, because it was the outdoor mass. So I went there on the Saturday night. I went to Atlanta for the Melkite Church on Sunday morning, stayed in Atlanta for my work, and then went down. Actually, I was supposed to go to New Orleans. I was driving it on a Friday afternoon, and Father calls me up and says, yeah, I don't think we're going to have mass on Sunday. And I thought, well, I didn't really know that was an option, but the hurricane was going to make landfall right as mass was letting out. So I had to reverse course, and I ended up driving up to Mississippi to Thea Bowman's church and just kind of dropped in and said, sorry, I couldn't let you know ahead of time, because I did try to let everyone know.
Not only I'm sorry to interrupt, but not only the weather. I don't know, we kind of set the time frame, but COVID happened at this time too.
Yeah, well, that was originally the idea. Was I wanted to do it January to December, 52 weeks, one mass per week. And then, kind of COVID laughed at that, because I was going to start in Hawaii because, I wanted to go there like right after Christmas and then stay. And that way I could, manage, wherever I was going next. But Hawaii was basically closed in January of 2021. So I waited, and I was like, I can't get started yet. So, in June, the vaccines had come out. We started taking down the ropes. And in fact, and I just basically called my publisher and said, listen, I'm just going to get going, because I had already been working on interviews with people by phone for like a year and a half before that. So I didn't want to get too far down the road. And he was like, yeah, that's good. So I just started, and basically, in June of 2021, the first mass was actually in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I helped, when I walked in, I helped Father take down the ropes between the pews. So it was kind of, I was like, all right, this is a good sign. And then I got locked out of church at the end of mass. So I was like, I hope that's not But so yeah, so that was,
It's interesting because, as we look back, sometimes we forget what we were through, all of those restrictions, and
yeah,
and hopefully we remember the fact, we are so privileged to be able to go into our churches. We're so blessed to be able to just, go in and receive the sacraments, and hopefully, it's human nature sometimes to go back to your old patterns, and you kind of take things for granted
yeah.
again. But I was wondering, because you had traveled extensively, and of course you mentioned Hawaii. How many of those trips was your family able to go on with you?
The full family came with me twice. We went to,
Okay.
I had to go back to New Orleans because I couldn't go the first time. We went there for Christmas Mass in 2021, which turned out perfectly. I mean, it turned out to be a blessing. The whole family went. We were there for the jazz mass, which they all loved. And so it worked out great. And then obviously you can't just justify going to Hawaii just to go to mass. So they had to come with me there. So I met them there. I flew from Alaska to Hawaii because at least that way I cut off like one really long flight. So I went out and I spent like 5 days with Father in Alaska. And then I flew to Hawaii, and my wife and my father-in-law and my youngest son met me out there like that afternoon that I got in. And then my two oldest children, who are both working and they couldn't get that much time off, so they met us out there for like Thursday through Monday or something. So we were all there for in Hawaii. So that was kind of like, I can't really, everywhere else I could do on a shoestring budget as much as possible, but I couldn't really do that twice. I was like, everybody, we're gonna go as a family.
And you know what? When I read that chapter on your visit to Alaska, okay, I do not like flying. It's one of my fears. I will go on a plane, but I don't enjoy it. I'm always anticipating it beforehand, and I white knuckle it all the way through. So that was quite. And of course, you tried to plan it not in the dead of winter.
I got there when it was like the sun was out, like almost like all night kind of thing. I was very, it was one of those things. When he invited me, I realized I can't pass this up, but I was terrified. I'd never flown in a small plane, and the previous priest, had died in a small plane crash. This previous priest who had started that ministry, but Father, Scott, he's like, he would fly in anything. I will not do that. I won't. If the wind is too high, I'm not going. If the cloud cover is too low, I'm not going. So he's very, cautious, and it turned out it was funny because, when you're on a commercial airline and, you get all the turbulence, it's very unsettling. But in there, it seemed kind of natural. It's like, okay, it's going to be shaking around. That's just the way it is. It's a small plane. And so by the return flight, I wasn't really nervous at all. So, still,
talk about some views. You must have seen incredible sights from flying in not only Alaska, but so many. You were at Yellowstone, and just
yeah, that was I tried not to do much sightseeing because my wife was home, and I felt like a lot of these places I want to go with her, and see these things. So I didn't do much. If I had a family member there, then it was different, because there were a couple of times my daughter joined. My daughter was living out east at the time, so she went to Maine with me. So we went to Acadia National Park, and my son came with me on a couple of different occasions because he lives out west. So he met me in Portland for the ASL Mass, and in Utah when I went to Utah. We were actually he had just moved to downtown San Francisco, so he had nowhere else to park. He had nowhere to park his car. So he drove to San Francisco. I flew, and then I drove his car home and took it. and so we met at Utah. So Yeah, there was some strange kind of things. So wherever, it was kind of like how I ended up doing it. It was like, but it all worked. It all fit so perfectly. That wasn't really, I don't think that was, I didn't have anything to do with that.
And you ended your journey at your parish. At your parish, I understand you've moved since then.
Twice since then.
But you ended at your parish that you were very active in that nativity of our Savior.
Yeah, that was where when the idea started. I mean, and that was where my wife was the principal for 10 years, and the kids all went to school there. So it was very much home. So even though we had moved, I always knew. I mean, that was the only one I knew from the beginning that this is where it was going to end. Was that, and then the rest of the book is not in chronological order, except for nativity. The rest of them I ordered differently for a couple of different reasons, like the Minnesota story on the extreme faith camp, and then Totus Tuus, the camp that Father Bernie started, who is just a character. He rolls his own cigarettes, and we stayed up until wee hours in the morning at the rectory and just talking, and he was great. But I did those on back-to-back weekend, or like I did the one on back-to-back weeks. So if I did it chronologically, there'd be a similar story right next to each other. So I didn't really want that. So I figured I'm not going to do it chronologically except for nativity. So then naturally, obviously, Florida, St. Augustine was the natural place to start the book, because that's really where the church starts in this country, at least in the 50 states. So it that. But yeah, nativity was very much. I knew all along that was where I was gonna end by coming back to to where where everything had started essentially.
Now, Daniel, do you have any future plans of possibly expanding that in the future? The 52 masses, I thought of 52 masses maybe in another country, or I mean, I know that would be quite an undertaking, but this was so good. This was so rich. That's what I want to tell all the viewers that are watching us today, that you've got to pick up a copy of 52 masses, because not only is Daniel a terrific writer, he really, you can get a taste of each and every stop along the way.
Well, thank you.
From the colorful people that you met, from the very, very devout people, like you said, as they reminded you that they were like living saints.
I think you when you're talking a question, about like where like ones that resonated with me, and I want to share this story just because it was so, well, it's just so moving. So when I went to St. Gianna's maternity home in North Dakota, I knew it was going to be a special weekend. I mean, I was going to stay with the Franciscan brothers, the Franciscan, and pray with them, and then meet the people at the home, for young women. I knew it was going to be very special, but I was in the process of interviewing a young woman her name was Kate. She was pregnant at 14, had a 2-year-old child. She was telling me her story, and it was she was very matter of fact about everything. She was, she had grown up in neglect. Her mother had died of a drug overdose. Didn't know her father. It's a very common, unfortunate story that so many of the, the women they serve, their stories, that it shouldn't be, but unfortunately. And she was telling me all of this, and the door bursts open, and there's a young lady. She's grown up at home, and so she's lived her whole life. She's 4, and so naturally she has the run of the place, as you can imagine. And so she's like, "Where's JJ?" That's the woman's son. Well, she's not here. She kind of shoos the girl out, and I figured this is a natural place for us to stop. And she said, "Oh no, we have to keep talking." I don't usually have people that are that eager to talk to me, and we sit back how do you stay married? How do you keep getting bored? How do you trust your spouse? All of these questions that she has about the life that I have, that she wants, but doesn't know how to get from where she is to there. And wonderful people at the home, and they're just wonderful, devout, models, for being, that they're valuable, but they're all single. And so she saw an opportunity with me to questions about the life on it. And I answered honestly can, and I pray that I was helpful, and I gave her the hope that she so desperately deserves. But as I reflected, I realized that of her, of all the things I expected when I never imagined I would be uniquely positioned to help someone. I was breaking bread with the hungry with Deacon Stoops in Baltimore, and I handed out gloves, but I weren't there. The gloves gotten handed out. I wasn't instrumental to the process. I love doing it. It was meaningful. I love the experience. Here, I was the person she needed at that moment to help her, to give her hope. And
God placed you in that moment at that time. That's a grace-filled moment. That was,
at that point, I realized, yes. No matter what happens the rest of the way, this has everything. That to be here for this young woman was wonderful, but also it told me I am not in charge here. That I'm going to be directed here, just where the Holy Spirit wants to be here for this young woman. And it's funny because the young lady from Ohio who actually lives just up the road from me now, who served mass in all 50 states, and her mother told me, because I interviewed them even before I went on the trip, because I sat down with them at their home, and she told me, she's like, you'll think you're in charge, but you're not. The Holy Spirit will be directing you the entire way, And I was like, when I reviewed my notes when I went back to see her, I was like, oh my gosh, everything she told me I would experience was absolutely true. And it was just, and it was great because knowing that I had that this is what I had been called to do, and this is where I was supposed to be. Whenever you start to feel doubt, whenever you start to wonder, can I do this? You just say, it doesn't really matter. This is what I've been called to do. So yeah, of course I can. And
so what started out as a very interesting idea and concept to say, I'd love to be able to put all of this in a book, so people could experience all of those different encounters that I had at all of those different places. It ended up because in the very final, chapter of your book, that's what you described, what you came away with. We have the wonderful book to read through and reread and maybe visit some of these wonderful sites and parishes along the way, and but you and we all would be touched. That's the thing I think that I came away with too from reading the book, is we all have the opportunity. We don't always have the resources to do what you did, but we all have the opportunity to visit parishes.
Oh, absolutely.
Within our area. And maybe make a day pilgrimage.
Oh, I absolutely. I have recommended. I mean, when you walk into a, one of the one of the many beautiful, every time you walk into a Catholic church, there's the what you can expect, which is the Mass, which is the same everywhere you go, which is this beautiful thing that no matter where you are on the planet, no matter what language you're speaking, it's the Mass, and you can experience it fully regardless of where you are. But at the same token, every every church has its own beauty, has its own character, and so everyone you go into has that opportunity to wow you, to amaze you, whether it's architecturally or the choir is just, is particularly reverent, and or the homily just really resonates with you. So every time you walk into a Catholic mass, you have that familiar and the unknown, and both of them are something worth treasuring. Get back to your question.
Yes.
About if I had plans to go elsewhere. You're only the second person that's ever kind of recognized that yes, the dream would be 52 abroad. Now somebody would have to figure out, I'd have to get a sponsor for that, because I asked my wife to make the sacrifice once. I would not be able to. It'd be a little bit harder to do that, but yeah, that would be that would be the dream follow-up, is to go to mass around the world, and continents, and experience the church in different places. And I don't know how I would pull it off. I don't know how I would really necessarily get the stories that I would write, because it was a little easier. It was hard enough to figure out where I was going to go in Puerto Rico because of the language barrier. So, multiply that by 40 or so, it would be a particular challenge, especially, I'm not choosing, one parish per state, but one parish maybe per country. but
Yes.
if the opportunity was there, I would jump on it, because it was the greatest experience of my life, that, on a non-family level, excluding, my wife and children. But it was, yeah, I
Yes, God bless them, because they definitely made a sacrifice, for you to be able to achieve this goal and write this book. And
I tell my wife a tremendous amount of gratitude for supporting me in doing this. I know one. She was very supportive, except for when I took her keys with me when I went to Seattle. That not go. Her car keys were in my coat pocket when I left for Seattle.
No.
I did mail them home, and they got home 2 days after I did.
Oh my goodness!
So that
wow.
But
now you can look back at it and laugh, but at the time it was probably pretty frustrating.
Phone calls from the road that week, and
Daniel, for anybody that might want to reach out to you, they're interested in contacting you about your experience, possibly. I don't know, do you go on speaking engagements at all?
I've done a couple at the parish, and I would love to do more. As you can tell, I love talking about it. But one of the things that I really like is that when I talk about it, I'm often reminded of something that I may have slipped my mind, and so it brings me it keeps me connected to the trip in a nice way, because people ask me questions like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about," or just inquire about something like. I was at the Augustine Institute, and they because I met a woman from there, and somebody said, where did they do Mass the best? And I was like, that's a great question. I didn't know, and so I started thinking about all the things that, what would be my ideal Mass? It was usually just taking a piece from here and there, to that I thought it was, they were really good about this. So that would be, so so I've done a couple of them. I did one at my parish. I did one at a parish in Indiana. But yeah, I'd love to, if anybody is looking for someone, pretty much in the Midwest, speak at their parish.
Now, where would be the best spot that somebody could pick up a copy? Your website, would that be the best place to go?
Yeah, well, you can get it on Amazon, but my website is, the thing about my website is, and it's not directly on my website. If you go to my website, you'll get redirected to where the site where you can purchase it, because I tried doing it through my website. It didn't work very well. But the new site, the site I use, works well. But the website is 52masses.com, so it's very easy to remember. And but if you order through that site, it's a Square site there's a link to it. Then if you want a signed copy and that I can describe it, I can only do that through the website, because the Amazon sales, I don't have anything to do with them. They just go straight from the publisher. But you can get it either way. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, about anything, they can reach me at 52masses@gmail.com. So that one was surprisingly not taken when I signed up for it. So,
well, I just love this idea. I love the book, and I really appreciate you spending some time with us today to talk about it. And everybody that's viewing this right now or in the recorded version, please, I'll link below the link where you can get a copy. I'll also, put Daniel's page there, so you can, if you want to get in touch with him personally, you can do that.
Anybody has any thought? I mean, about the book, or anything. I love talking about people who are just interested, and if they have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Through my email. I have no, I'm not. Don't discourage anyone from reaching out and talking. So
fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful new year. We're just starting a new year, and still I've been saying Merry Christmas, because I celebrate Christmas all the way until February the 2nd, the presentation of the Lord. So I'll have my decorations and lights up and going for quite a while.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I really appreciate everything you've done.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So everyone out there, remember, go to the site below and get yourself a copy of 52 Masses. You're going to love it. It's a fascinating read, and it really puts into perspective the gift that we have is our Catholic faith. Yep. And the amazing parishes that are out there. So like Daniel says, you read the book, and you might have a tug on your heart of implementing a lot of the things that he experienced through his trip to put that in practice and be that instrument that's needed to bring the vitality to your parish and just make our faith come alive. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. Bye, Daniel.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.